By me father arrive osim 5 minutes more. I called earlier about a need for transport for my wife. When we came back to the field in August, before we left, we decided we needed to do medical evacuation insurance.
We didn't actually have it in place the first time, which we were going to have it, and it just never happened.
Which
with
was
all the
not smart.
Yeah, with all the rushing and everything. When we took our survey trip several years ago, we had been able to walk through the hospitals, see the hospitals, so we knew what kind of medical care we were dealing with. We've had experience with the hospital here, making visits and things, so we knew that if anything major were to happen, we would have to get evacuated. And we also knew there's a lot of risk with that because it takes time, which we learned that it takes a lot of time.
And personally, once we bought the medical insurance, I thought, I knew it was smart to have. I said it's really smart. I thought it was really smart to have. But it's just kind of one of those things I never thought we'd have to use. Personally, I never thought we'd have to use it. And on November the 21st, Nora started having pains.
I started having a lot of pain, and I was about 7 or 8 months postpartum at the time, so I thought it was just my cycle starting back. And then it just got worse and worse for over 2 days. I was in bent over in pain,
curled up in our bed.
And so then on Saturday we had kind of discussed. I think you brought up that we should get you checked by a doctor, and we were like, well, let's do our own.
So we were trained by
doctors.
We were trained. What was it called?
Medical intensive
MMI.
Yeah.
Equip medical missions in their MMI program. And
they trained us how to do a physical exam and how to kind of try to figure out what the symptoms are and then figure out what the diagnosis could be.
So I did a physical, and everything was pointing to appendicitis. Yeah. And I said, if this is appendicitis, then we need to get a doctor, because medical insurance, evacuation insurance, is going to not take my word for it. So
because he started pushing where my appendix would be in that area, and it was super painful.
And so we got the doctor in. He came in, and he agreed with my suspicions that it was a acute abdomen appendicitis.
Not acute, yeah. He thought it was appendicitis too. He had me take a pregnancy test, which was negative, just to rule out ectopic pregnancy. And he said, no, I think it's appendix. We need to get her out. We're not going to be able to operate on her here. So that's when everything kind of went crazy.
Yeah.
Michael called our evacuation place, and they said that in order for me to be evacuated, I had to be hospital to hospital. So because the doctor here wanted to take me to his private clinic, so I could stay there until I could be evacuated, and still, instead of having to get admitted into the hospital here, just because the conditions of the hospital here they have a lot left to be desired. But the program said I had to be admitted into a hospital. So we made the decision to go ahead and get me to the hospital so I could be admitted, have the admission papers, and then the doctor could call and get the evacuation, because that was just to even start the process. So we quick packed up, and it was just, the decision, it just kind of happened so suddenly.
And Nora went from just laying on the couch. Did you even try to eat supper? I don't think you tried to eat supper.
I hadn't had an appetite.
But just kind of
time.
waiting on the doctor to saying goodbye to Corban and us going to the hospital.
And that was hard. I remember, because everything was just so busy, and we were just packing up, and then Corban was going to bed. We decided to wait and put Corban to bed before we left so he wouldn't be worried. And so I had to go in there and say goodbye to him and say goodnight to him. And I remember just bawling, because at that point here I was, and I was in extreme pain, which was made me teary enough. But then when you're in extreme pain and you don't know why you're in extreme pain, and there's so many unknowns, and with the evacuation and everything, it hit me that I could be saying goodbye to him forever.
And it wasn't for certain at the time that it was acute appendicitis.
We didn't know.
We didn't know for sure. It could have been something much more serious. Obviously we found out that it wasn't acute appendicitis, but there was so much unknown, and so Nora had all this going on in her head. That's when things hit me that this is really serious. The drive to the hospital was pretty interesting. By me falla arrive oss in 5 minutes no more.
The roads are full of potholes, and with the pain that I was in, any kind of movement at all made it so much worse. And so that was rough.
Yeah.
In case you haven't noticed, I don't like boring.
I bet any of you who've been in the hospital in the States cannot say that you've had a coconut under your bed. Huh? Left over from who knows when. But how special am I? I have a coconut under my bed. What's the story about the kids' channels?
Yes, this is Michael Deatrick. I called earlier about a need for transport for my wife.
When the doctor was talking on the phone to the doctors with the evacuation, they needed to know for sure that it was not something they could treat here. And so they kept asking different questions. They're like, have you done an ultrasound yet? Have you done this yet? Have you run blood work yet? And they're like, no, we can't do that till Monday. No, we can't do that till Monday. No, we are not able to do that. We don't have the facilities to do that at all. You know, we don't have the facilities to do that.
If you run a CT, we don't have that.
So there was a lot. It was just kind of funny listening to him talk like that.
He's like, no, we don't have that. No, we can't do that. No.
He's like, we're very remote. We don't have the access to things like that.
I'm doing well. How are you? We're missionaries here. We've been here since we've been here full time as missionaries since January 2018.
I'm going to explain this next video because with the kind of pain that I was in, when I was moving, it would be really, really bad. And then once I had sat still or laid down for a little while, it would get a lot better and it wouldn't be as extreme. And so then when I was in less pain, I would start questioning myself and I'd start telling Michael, honey, I really don't think we really need to get evacuated. I'm probably making a bigger deal of it than this is. It's really not that big of a deal. I'm sure it's nothing. And I'd second guess the whole evacuation and everything. And so then I made this video because Michael actually told me I needed to make the video to play for myself when I was not in pain, because I was in a lot of pain when I made this video, as a reminder. So you can watch that. Just for me, when I'm feeling a little better and I'm starting to question my judgment, I'm very glad that we're going out, because this pain is absolutely terrible. And I question myself all the time, and I think, no, it's really not that bad. We don't need to go. It's fine. Why am I making such a big deal about this? And it's a big deal right now. So I'm glad. So don't question yourself, Nora.
So we spent until, what was it, around 2 o'clock?
2 or 3 in the morning.
2 or 3 in the morning we spent in the hospital. I had taken Kezia and Claire back to the house so they could actually get some sleep in their beds.
Because we knew at that point that it was going to be a long process. At first we kind of thought this evacuation thing, like, it should only take a few hours for them to come get me. And then we realized, okay, no, it's going to be a long...
It wasn't going to be wheels up until early morning.
And then it ended up being a lot later.
Yeah, and then it ended up being a lot later. And so
3 in the afternoon, or what was
it? It was 2.
2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, and so then the doctor told us that we might as well just go home. It's probably better for us to be at home than so.
They had given me an IV with antibiotics in case it was appendicitis, so that in case it ruptured or anything. So they gave me antibiotics. I wasn't taking anything for the pain other than some ibuprofen because I was nursing, and so that was my decision, which I ended up having to not nurse anyway, but later on. But I wanted to nurse as much as I could. So I wasn't on anything, and they said, just leave the port in, go home, sleep, and then you can come back in the morning for your next dose.
Anyway, going back to the house, it was kind of like a good thing and a bad thing, because even though it is the hospital here in the Solomon Islands, there was still some weird sense of safety in it.
For you?
In being there. Like, yeah. But then coming back to the house, I'm like, okay, what if something does go wrong while we're away from a doctor?
I guess I didn't really feel much safety there.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I mean, even despite the condition of the hospital. And so, anyway, yeah, going back to the house was interesting, but we both got sleep.
Yeah, so the ride back, that was the worst pain I was in, the ride back. And and then I remember I started singing, that's when I started singing Lord Send Me Anywhere over and over in my head, because I was in just so much pain. I can't even describe that. And when you're in that much pain and you don't know why you're in so much pain, it's scary. And I've been there before when I had my blood clot. And I knew this was a different kind of pain, so that kind of scared me too, because then who knows what kind of pain this is. But it took me a good 2 hours I was just curled up on the bed and laid still and did not move. I remember when you got in bed, like even the littlest shaking of the bed made the pain a lot worse.
But we eventually got up, and the doctor said to go ahead and come on in, and we went in, and then we waited.
And waited.
And waited. And,
And
waited.
waited.
And waited.
This evacuation thing, I mean, let me tell you, if I was having a heart attack,
Solomon time.
it would. I don't think I'd make it. And that was a sobering thing, was just like realizing how far away we really are from any kind of medical care, because this was an emergency evacuation. This is as fast as they go, and it wasn't very fast.
This day's kind of got all of us, like Kezia.
What are your thoughts?
Well, this coconut really isn't helping us out much. Thought it was a good luck charm.
Oh, is there a coconut under this
But
seat?
it's the same bed. Coconut is still there.
Oh.
Day 2.
Oh, that hurts.
Finally, the ambulance came. The ambulance is actually really nice.
And the guy who runs them is top notch.
And all the staff, honestly, all the staff at the hospital here were amazing. It's just, they just don't have
the equipment.
They don't have the equipment, and the hospital was pretty dirty too.
When we finally got to the airport and got her onto the plane, for me, like, even though if something would have happened on the plane, it would have not been good. I don't know, for me, I had this sense of relief, like, okay, she's only 4 hours away from being at an adequate hospital.
Well, and they had a nurse on board and a paramedic on board, and they were monitoring, which I hadn't had any monitoring of my vitals at all since the initial appointment. And we had posted on our Facebook already. People were praying, and it was just amazing. Like that ride, I was nervous because it's a small plane, but that ride was so smooth, and I was so thankful.
And we need to stop and say another huge blessing in all of this was the timing, and Mom and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law being here at that time, having to deal with the kids in a situation like this. I don't know how we would have done it. I mean, it would have happened, I know that, and we would have figured something out, but Nora would have most likely been going to the hospital by herself, because she couldn't have handled Claire. I mean, she couldn't have handled Kezia. And anyway, it just worked out that this was all happened when Mom and Claire were here, because they.
And you're seeing my sister through all of this. She was along for the whole thing, taking care of Kezia, and Kezia is a chunk, and she's also with crawling already at this point, and wanted to be moving everywhere.
Yeah.
And so let me tell you, I mean, honestly, once we got down into Australia and. After that flight of her Kezia slept for just a very short time, hardly anything. on that flight. And I looked at Claire and I was like, Claire, I honestly think I'd rather be on this bed in my pain than what you've had to go through with trying to wrangle a small baby for that many hours in a row.
She was
Without her, she couldn't get on the floor.
she was exhausted.
It was hard. And then we finally put her on the floor, and that when they got me into an actual room in the hospital, and a nurse came in and was like, picked her right up and took her out. We were worried that they were gonna like take her to child services or something. We were like, I'm sorry, we were just so tired. But thankfully they had an actual family room with carpet, and Kezia could crawl around. And then we had missionaries that we had just met a few months before, and they came, and that was a huge blessing. They picked up Claire and Kezia and took them to their house and took care of everything. I mean,
There was just so many things that God did for us that was beyond our comprehension.
Well, I look a bit on the rough side, but we've made it to the hospital. Yeah. It was a little bit of an adventure. I didn't get hardly any video once we actually got to Australia. I was kind of preoccupied with other things, like being in a lot of pain and a lot of testing. And they ran a bunch of tests. They did an ultrasound, they did a CAT scan, and they found out it was not my appendix, and that it was an ovarian cyst. And they could see that there was ovarian torsion. My ovary was twisted, and so they decided to go ahead and remove the cyst. So from Sunday night, when Claire and Kezia left to go with this missionary family, all the way to Monday, they ended up doing the surgery on Monday late morning or afternoon, I think. And I was just by myself for all of it. And that was, I guess it didn't really hit me till afterwards that I went through it by myself. Yeah. I just kind of...
It hit me.
Really?
That you went through it, yeah. I mean, and then when she went through the surgery, like, I had a timetable, and I never heard anything. And then finally, I decided, you know what, I can call the hospital and see, and basically all they could say was, we can't tell you how her surgery went or how it's going. Is she still in surgery right now? I was like, oh, well, she should have been out of surgery like 2 hours ago. Anyway, it turned out that she had been out of surgery, and she had just not been back up to her room yet. She was in recovery. Anyway, but that was not fun.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Being a 4-hour flight from your wife and her being in surgery and not being able to know how that... I wish we would have set that up differently where they could have called me and...
Well, I gave them a number, but that didn't end up working. But because they said that surgery was supposed to take an hour, and ended up taking 2 hours, because they were originally going to just do the laparoscopic. Well, they went in to do laparoscopic, and they couldn't break apart the cyst. It was a solid dermoid cyst, and they said it was so compacted and so solid and hard that they could not break it apart. So then they had to open me up all the way to get take the cyst out whole. So it wasn't a super huge cyst, but it was too hard for them to take it out. So then recovery was interesting, because then I was recovering from laparoscopic with all the gas pain from laparoscopic, but I was also recovering from an open abdominal surgery too. So it was kind of a mix of those two things. But then you guys...
Then we arrived. Oh, you need to put this in. I've got video from the truck.
Okay.
You know, sometimes it just feels like when it rains, it pours. I forgot about this completely. And when it does rain, it often pours. On the way to the airport, I'm excited to go finally catch up with her. And
I had surgery. Everything was fine. It was the day after my surgery
so
already.
I'm just excited. I mean, obviously everything that has happened has been inconvenient and unplanned. Anyway, we're driving, and all of a sudden, I just hear a big metal snap in my Prado. We're on our way to the airport, and the whole right driver's side of my Prado just drops down. And I go in there, and my tire literally broke off. Thank you, Solomon Island roads. Okay, if you didn't see what happened, on the way to the airport, our truck snapped, literally, it broke. So I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but it's just, when it rains, it pours. Just a crazy day. Thankfully, it broke down in front of one of the villages where we have a lot of church kids that come to church. And so I was able to squeak it off to the side of the road and get it out of the way, and then watched it. And one of the men in our church, he was going to watch the Prado anyway. I gave him the keys and said, this needs fixed, and I handed him a couple thousand Solomon and say, please, I mean, when you get time, just fix this if you can. Have somebody fix it. And anyway, when we left, and
you got to the airport
we had
in
a
time.
plane, I couldn't cancel the flight because of a Prado. I wasn't going to cancel the flight.
Well, I'm glad. 'Cause I was ready for you to get back.
But anyway, he called me that evening, and he had it fixed. Got a
Already.
mechanic right away, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of one of those things. At that point, it wasn't even something where I was like, oh, come on. It was just like, oh, okay, why not? I mean,
We've kind of been through, it seems like any major thing that we've gone through, there's always been like several things. And so it's kind of like you just expect it. You expect all the other things to come along too.
Anyway. But it was, I mean, that one ended up being resolved fairly smoothly. Where are we going? Big airplane. Big airplane. Here we go. Here we go. Where are we going? Airplane.
And then I ended up getting discharged that night, right? So Tuesday night I got discharged, and they didn't give me, I didn't have any kind of discharge papers to sign, no discharge instructions, so I really had no idea what to expect for recovery. And I was lifting Kezia, and recovery was a little bit of a bumpy ride just because I didn't really know what anything was going. So I kind of asked some people that I was able to, the missionary that we were staying with had C-section, so she was able to kind of give me advice on that, and then I was able to get gas pain advice from Facebook. And nausea, I think, nausea advice actually is what I asked for because I was in a lot of nausea. It was kind of hard because we hadn't been able to do hardly anything that we were wanting to do with my mom and sister when they visited. I mean, there's so many different things that we kind of had planned. Actually, we're getting ready to go to the beach that weekend, and we kind of had already postponed that because of how much pain I was in, but then, obviously it just never happened. And so there's a lot of things, but at the same time, it was amazing how God worked everything out with having my mom and sister there.
We were able to find a nice Airbnb and stay there, and we had a nice Thanksgiving. It was quite the experience.
Going in, we kind of knew what we were getting into. Living here, we kind of knew what we were getting into.
But all around, we are super thankful for God's protection and for His provision. And we have seen God in so many aspects of this video, in the time period that this video was made and created. It's just been amazing to see, and we're very thankful for all the prayers and all the support that we received from it. Thank you guys so much.
If you would like to follow our channel here, we post videos weekly at least of just life as missionaries in the Solomon Islands. If you'd like to follow our videos, click the subscribe button and hit the little bell if you want to be reminded of when the videos are posted.
Ding!
Like the video if you enjoyed watching it, and leave us a comment. And we'll see you next time.
God bless.
We're going to turn the fan on.